Thank you for joining this session on the startup ecosystem in Africa. For the next 25 plus minutes, we're going to speak about how technology, how innovation is helping to shape the Africa of tomorrow. My name is David van Dijk. I help run an organization called the African Business Angel Network. It's a non-profit that's founded to get many more investors excited about the opportunities in Africa. And I'm very happy that I'm joined today by a super amazing panel. They're all experts in their fields, and they represent different stakeholders in the startup ecosystem. Let me allow a very brief introduction, and then later you have a chance to speak more about the work you do and the organizations you represent. So we have Temi on my left here, on your right, founder of LifeBank, which is one of the most sort of promising startups in Nigeria in the health sector. You hang out with Mark Zuckerberg. You're in the mainstream press every other week as one of the main innovators, so thank you for joining us. We have Els Boerhoff, partner of Goodwill Investments. Goodwill is probably one of the most successful early-stage investors in frontier states, frontier countries, India, Sub-Saharan Africa, very much looking at how technology is an enabler for change. You look at very exciting companies in big data, Internet of Things, infrastructure, connectivity. So thanks again for joining. We have, I'm going to have to make sure I pronounce this correctly, Jitinji Jitahi, joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. You're the group CEO of Amref Health. To the Dutch here in the audience, we know it probably as Flying Doctors, which is the largest healthcare-focused NGO on the African continent. Yeah. Thank you for joining. Last, certainly not least, we have Hans Doctors. And I promised your people in The Hague I would pronounce this correctly.
Not difficult.
You're the, well, this part, you're the ambassador for Private Sector and Development Corporation and Director Sustainable Economic Development for the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yeah. People might also know you as our former ambassador to Ghana. So thank you for joining. I would like to start with a question to Els first. So you've been at the forefront of investing in Sub-Saharan Africa for many years. Can you sort of help the audience understand what are the main developments in the African startup system? What is happening today?
What we see as an investor in relatively young companies across the continent is that things are moving very fast. And what makes me most happy is that in the past you saw young Africans go abroad to study, and most of them never returned. What we see now, they either study in Africa or they study abroad, get a few years of working experience. Temi, maybe you did the same, and then come back because they see opportunities in their own countries. So we see, we've recently mapped the number of startups in Sub-Saharan Africa. We've been able to identify 4,000 across the continent in all sorts of sectors. Most of them are tech-driven nowadays, and that makes us excited because we want to solve the world's problems by investing in companies that provide basic goods and services to people, and tech is an important driver to reach more people at lower cost. And yeah, across all sectors, tech solutions are there, and it's going so fast that my personal preference is to only invest in companies with promoters below 40, because it's, you know, to be on top of things, the most promising startups or young companies are with teams of around 30, early 30s.
Okay, very good, thank you. I hope you don't mind to start with the ladies here, but yes. Temi, you are a successful entrepreneur. You're based in Lagos, Nigeria. You were born and raised in Lagos. You spent part of your schooling in the US. You lived in the Western world, you worked in Switzerland. So what made you decide to become a tech entrepreneur in Lagos?
Right, so Africa has a lot of problems, and I'm sure you all know about those problems in the health sector, in the education sector. But the part that the world does not know is also Africa has a lot of young people who are actually solving those problems, using technology as an enabler to sort of build systems that would have been more expensive and take more time before. So we have a lot of young people doing that, solving the problems that we see on our continent. So one of the reasons why I decided to go back was because I saw those opportunities to be useful to the continent and to make a lot of money as well while solving social problems. So that's one of the reasons why I left the West to go back to Africa after being raised in the United States and working all over the world. There's so many opportunities for social change and for building truly technology innovation, and there's so much opportunities to make money as well. So those are one of the pointers for pushing me towards this direction.
Thank you. Jitenji, you run a very large NGO in the health sector. Now, a rumor has it that later today you will announce the launch of an investment fund, which is going to invest in the most promising African startups that are tackling sort of the most difficult challenges in the health space. Please meet Temi. Temi, please meet Jitani. So my question would be, why is an NGO like yourselves, why is innovation important, and why are you looking to invest in startups?
Wow. Nice meeting you, Temi. And you know, AMREF Health Africa has been operating in Africa for 60 years now in the area of healthcare. And what we've found is that over time, there is a need to accelerate the way we do our work so that we can achieve more quicker. If you look at the healthcare sector in Europe and America, it's been built over many years. And right now we can say that there is, in many countries in Europe, you have universal access to healthcare. But when you look at Africa, we're still talking about a very small number of people being able to access healthcare. If we follow the route that Europe or North America has followed to get there, we are going to lose a lot of mothers and children. So there is a need to look at ourselves as an NGO and say, how do we accelerate? How do we leapfrog our work so that we can reach more people faster, so that we don't have to go through that cycle of loss of life? And the only thing we see is technology that can actually help us to get there, and generally, even beyond technology, innovation, you know, in its full ecosystem. So we ask ourselves then, what do we have to offer as an NGO? Because we don't have developers, you know, like Temu. We don't have the ability to create technology innovation. But what we have is the markets on which to learn, on which to test the ideas, and on which to actually create customers for those ideas. So what we are looking to do as AMREF Health Africa is create the Innovate for Life Fund, which is going to be a fund that's going to identify ideas from young African people, and then we bring them on board to AMREF, almost like innovators in residence, so that they have access to the market to learn and to test. Because right now, if you talk to someone like Temu, she'll tell you, even when you're developing an idea and you need to go to the market to test it, you have to go through public administration, you have to access the market, you have to learn who is the chief in that area, but AMREF offers that and therefore makes it easier and accelerates the, you know, the innovation cycle. So this is what we are looking to do, and the Innovate for Life Fund is to help us be able to attract those innovators and then incubate them and then co-develop with them. And with a future for ourselves, to also create a market-driven model for the future for delivering healthcare, so that healthcare is not dependent on handouts, but is dependent on market-driven based on the pyramid approaches.
Okay, very good. Hans, I think that the same question to you a little bit in terms of, you know, why is the Dutch government prioritizing or interested, supporting innovation and startups in Africa? And maybe a first question is that maybe not everyone in the audience is familiar with the types of initiatives that the Dutch government is involved in today already.
Yeah. No, thank you for that question. I mean, for us, we are involved in Africa because we want to support developments there and to help alleviate poverty. And we believe that through private sector growth, that is the best way forward. And I've seen over the last 10 years an incredible drive in development, driven by technology, in healthcare solutions, but also in finance solutions, and giving people access to finance, partly driven by mobile technology, but also, for example, by satellite technology. We have a program together with the Netherlands Space Office that makes satellite data available to farmers, but also to banks, to come up with solutions to collateralize the information you have about how many cows a farmer owns, for example, and that you can then use to give a loan. Those kinds of innovations really spur growth. Also in healthcare, in insurance. The Matiba Health Wallet is an innovation developed by a Dutch NGO that we have also supported from the Dutch government, that now makes healthcare affordable for 500,000 people. And they've just been working for a couple of years, and this technology helps them. And it also helps them in the back office later to build other products and services that can bring down the cost of healthcare for people in Africa even further. So there's all these things happening. There's a very thriving ecosystem of young entrepreneurs that we support also through our programs, bring them together, bring them into touch with people across Africa, but also in Europe, in the Netherlands, to co-create, because that's also important, because we've seen sometimes that innovators or people developing tech solutions here in Holland, they come to Africa, they think they can solve everything with their app or with their technology. And it can only work, we've seen, if they co-create together with local people who know the market, who know the needs of customers and consumers, and really come up with products that drive growth. So from the Dutch government side, we have a number of programs for startups. If you just want to develop your idea or you need some capital to start your business in Africa, we have that for Dutch entrepreneurs who want to go there, but also, and most importantly actually, for local entrepreneurs. So for those who are interested, go to our website or talk to me if you want to find your way there. But there's lots of opportunities to help you bring your business to Africa. Because I've also noticed here today, and I'm sure the others have seen as well, Africa is not on the agenda. Asia is hardly on the agenda. Most of the innovations and technologies that we see here at the Next Web are only focused on Europe and the US. But there's a whole world out there.
So speaking about building solutions that work globally, or building solutions that are sort of African solutions to African problems. I mean, else as an investor, do you look for companies that are, let's say, the next Facebook, or you look for companies that have a solution for a specific, that fits in the African context?
Yeah, many demands of people are universal. And it's sometimes so bloody easy. For example, when you look at the financial needs of people, in access to financial services, what people want, 1 is access to savings, 2 payments, 3 insurance, and 4 access to loans. That's universal. People know microfinance and microcredit nowadays, but we tend to forget the savings, the payments, the insurance. If payments is number 2 on the list, and in 2011 in Nigeria, Pagatech, there was a management team that wanted to bring mobile payments to Nigeria, and Nigeria was such an enormous cash-based economy. It was just incredible, and it was a nuisance to everybody. It was not safe. You give your money to a taxi driver to bring it to your mom. He puts it in the tire because that's a safe place. The taxi gets a flat tire, money in the air, everything gone. It's a no-brainer if there's a bunch of talented guys that bought existing technology from Ethiopia to roll out mobile payments in a market with 170 million people. And it's their number 2 demand. So you still run an execution risk, as we call it, as investors, but there's so many talented teams. And there are many more things. I mean, I just digged it up. This is an old scratch card to buy airtime. I mean, this is still how you buy airtime in Africa. I do it as well. I mean, if you give a merchant in the market a POS device, a point of sale device, you pay with your phone or even with cash, you get a code. And all this, which is a huge logistical operation across the continent, is gone. And the guy on the market, instead of selling this, has a machine, so he can sell digital airtime, but he can also sell the opportunity to pay your electricity bill, to pay school fees, whatever.
So mobile airtime is, across the board, is prepaid in Africa, correct?
Yeah.
And I guess a scratch card will be, the value will be $1.50 maybe, on average. So how many scratch cards will there be?
€2.
€2, there we go. Yeah, so digitizing this is a perfect example.
It's just an example.
Very good. So Tammy, you have government, NGO, an investor next to you. if you look, your life as an entrepreneur, what are your main obstacles? What do you see as your biggest challenges and your biggest opportunities, and how can the people here on stage, how can they help you?
Right. So what LifeBank does is match medical doctors, medical hospitals with the essential medical products they need. So we have a data platform that harnesses all the information about blood, plasma, platelets, and then newly vaccines and oxygen. We harness all the suppliers and get their information, and we deploy this discovery platform to the hands of our hospital clients, and then we have a delivery channel built on top of that. So we, when we launched, we originally wanted to launch the platform as a strictly technology platform, using data science and using predictive modeling and artificial intelligence to build predictive platforms for hospitals. Then we realized that there was no logistics system. There was no infrastructure to actually deliver this product to the hospitals. So we had to build it. And as anyone knows, building a fleet is quite expensive. So those are the sort of challenges we have in Africa, the lack of infrastructure and the lack of even like auxiliary things to the technology you're actually building. And we just realized that we have to build it, and we have to launch that out to our customers to actually deliver our technology to them. So with investors and government and NGOs here, what we need, for example, funding and investment, actually investment, not grants, investment, access to customers, and then platforms and infrastructure that will let us validate our business model. For example, LifeBank, we've been in the middle of raising our seed round for the last few months. It's only $250,000 US dollars. We've raised about half of that, and we're looking to raise the rest of it. So if anyone here wants to invest, let me know. But so actually having access to investment and not grants and not loans to actually validate our business model will be very useful because what we're trying to do is build everything out, build infrastructure, build technology that will let us save a lot of lives on the African continent.
So being a tech company in your case in Nigeria also means you are a logistics company, or it also means you need to actually create much more than...
Absolutely, more than the technology.
Yes,
yep.
Fair enough, okay.
Absolutely.
Maybe Hans, your time in Ghana, what are things that, and your earlier time also in Ethiopia and Nairobi, what are things that people might not understand or realize about Africa today, about sort of innovation and the startup scene in Africa?
Yeah, no, that technology is really important, that real products are being developed, be it in healthcare or in climate innovation. We have a climate innovation center in Ghana and actually also one in Kenya, where businesses can develop climate-smart technologies. And that a lot of young people are really driven and really well connected and have the similar problems and ideas and as startups here. And but they will also be the future leaders of Ghana and the future business leaders of Africa, because it's a continent that is continuously innovating and is in many ways starting from scratch. There's not a lot of infrastructure, so they're actually well primed to benefit from the technology boost and the connectivity that we have today.
Okay, very good. Jitanji? So, what do you think will be the big game changers? If you look specifically at the health sector in Africa, what needs to happen to fix the most, the biggest challenges, if you will?
Wow. I don't know that you're aware that Africa has an extremely young population. The median age in Africa is 19 years. That means that half the population of Africa is under 19. They're even just starting to get their IDs to vote. And I think this is the biggest game changer for healthcare in Africa, both in terms of demand side and also in supply. We need to look at it both ways. And therefore, we have no option, people like ourselves, to engage with the youth and engage with innovation, because that is really the biggest game changer they bring. If you look at Africa, you will know that the biggest problem is communicable diseases. It's diseases that we can prevent. And these diseases are, if you look at the majority of people who die, they die because of HIV, pneumonia, malaria, diarrhea. Diarrhea kills 2,000 children in Africa every day, 90 years after penicillin was discovered, where you have basic commodities that can resolve that problem, oral rehydration salts. So the problem of Africa is actually not advanced medicine, advanced or highly trained doctors, or advanced hospitals. It is access to healthcare. It's basic. It's the thing that she's talking about. It's access to commodities, access to healthcare. So we need to look at what can we do to activate communities with their own resources even, so that we are not actually saying give them more. Activate their resources that they actually hold. Now, some of these things are creating what we call community units. Empowering the community, training people we call community health workers at the ground level who are able to first understand healthcare and therefore be able to advise the mothers and the children about what to do, about basic things like clean water, diarrhea, pneumonia. Also educate them to refer when need be, educate them to connect to the blood supply, and these people also then become a supply chain. They become a distribution channel for private sector to access the market, which is the most difficult thing for even private sector to do. So for AMREF, we have actually tried to train this on the mobile phone. So that's the other game changer now. You look at the mobile phone, there was a slide there that showed a woman holding a very small phone, which is really the analog phone. That phone cannot hold an app, cannot receive internet. So you ask yourself the question, so what do I use with this phone? You create platforms that are text-based, voice-based, and you're able to train community health workers on that from wherever they are. And this is what we are looking to activate through the Innovation for Life Fund, and working with people like Elsevier Foundation, Philips, and other partners that we are working with to really drive this asset that is untapped. And that is what we are offering as a platform. Innovators to come, we offer them the market, the channels, the community health workers, the communities themselves, and then they drive market-driven solutions for that change healthcare.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very clear. So we're already sort of going towards the final part of our panel conversation. Maybe a question to all of you. So if there's one thing that you think the audience should take away from what is happening today, where the ecosystem is going, maybe what the ecosystem still needs. What is like the one thing you want to share or sort of emphasize towards the audience? I don't know who wants to go. Wants to go first?
I'll go first. I think the one thing to realize is that young Africans, young educated Africans have now, for the first time ever in history, access to the same information as we all have because of the internet. And that is driving a profound change. And you notice it, even people with no education, they now say, oh, I got these skills from YouTube, or I taught myself through the internet. And that is a profound change. They have access now to information they never had before. So we're at the beginning of a big change, I think, in Africa.
Yep. I think for me the thing to say is that Africa doesn't need pity. Africa needs focus and hope. You can make the amount of money required to change healthcare in Africa for the private sector is enormous. It is huge. So don't look at Africa as a place where you're going to try and help people. Look at a place where you're going to work with the people to catalyze the value that rests in the communities. Think of the bottom of the pyramid. Think of the power of the small. And think that that power of the small can create a butterfly effect that can change Africa forever and change you as an innovator.
Thank you.
Africa is building. We're building technology. We're building technology that's far above what you think we're building. We're doing amazing work. And you can come join what we're doing. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Else?
Yeah, the opportunity is enormous. That's why we are investing there. And you see some talented people on stage here. It's many of them in Africa. Cloud computing, I think, is one of the real big game changers, because anything in the cloud, you don't need hardware anymore. And hardware, the expenses are enormous, but they're extra expensive in the African context, because there is often no electricity, so you need a generator. You need an air-conditioned room for your hardware. That all adds up to it. When you have all that expensive equipment there, you need a security guard to look after it. So anything in the cloud, I think, is really making a difference in a continent which still lacks infrastructure. Anything in the cloud, anything off-grid energy, education over the phone, healthcare over the phone, that's definitely the future. If you're thinking about that business, it's an enormous market with nearly 1 billion people and a young population. Yeah.
Very good. So maybe it's good to sort of to summarize that. I think that there's, if I hear the panelists, that there's endless opportunities. There's a lot of sort of innovation happening right now. At the same time, it's also, it's not easy. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. There's multiple things that you have to build as an entrepreneur. And then there's, I guess, the hope factor in terms that, you know, if people want this, then this will happen. We have about 2 minutes left, which means there could be a question from, there we go. There's a question here.
Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm a game developer. I love Africa. I've researched a lot on how I can work in Africa, and especially Nigeria, actually, because I know Nigeria is one of the largest game markets, or mobile game markets in Africa. I saw there were a few game companies. However, I think maybe there's a lack of, and maybe from the Dutch government side, is when I go to the travel advice from the Dutch government towards Nigeria, it's all red. And I hear a lot of stories that Western people in Africa have to live in gated communities, and it gives a very dangerous feeling, actually. Yeah, maybe, yeah, that's it.
That's it? Yeah. So Hans will change the
But I'll
travel
say
advisory in
about
a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
A few years ago, Mark Zuckerberg came to Nigeria, and he walked on the streets from one end of our ecosystem to the other end of our ecosystem. And that was just him walking around, and no one tried to grab him, and nothing happened to him, and he had a great time. He had some Nigerian beer, and he had some food, and he saw some of the innovation we're building in Nigeria. So I would say it's a little overblown, and the market is open, and come and see.
I think also a key message here, and from my experience sort of working and traveling in different parts of Africa, is you got to come over. It makes all the difference. So come to Lagos, come to Cape Town, come to Nairobi. Time for one more question, I think. Who wants to go? Anyone?
Hi, my name is Hidayat. I work for Rise Up, which is a company that connects entrepreneurs to resources in Cairo. And we have one of the biggest entrepreneurship summits in the Middle East, and it's based in Cairo. So my question is kind of, what startups or what are the industries to look out for in Africa right now? For us, this is of extreme relevance to our work, and I'd be interested to hear your point of view.
Okay, I would say, I'll speak from a healthcare point of view, that, as I said, there are millions of dollars to be made from healthcare. But you have to look at it from a point of view of first understanding the needs of the people. The needs of the people down there is about health insurance, for example, its coverage. That's a huge opportunity to deliver community-based health insurance in an innovative way. That's huge. The next thing is about delivery of commodities, just making sure that commodities are connected between the end facility from, connecting the whole supply chain. Those, again, are really big. But I'll tell you that the biggest thing is probably not yet discovered. So you need to calm down and find it, and we'll find it together.
Okay, I think we're running out of time. I think that there is we would love to continue the conversation. We're all going to be around for a little bit of time, so find us if you have more questions. Please join me in thanking the great panel, and thank you for being here today.